Once again, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the session on mastering Vlookup. Some of you have come for my earlier sessions, so you know how we plan the entire thing. Those of you who are coming for the first time, you might be wondering, how can I do a hands-on session if I haven't shared the files with you? Now, that's a very conscious decision. What happens is that in a 1.5 hour session, if I also give you the files to work on, it tends to take a lot of time. Believe me, nothing would make me happier than having you work with me. But because we want to balance the duration of the session, we want to keep it short, but at the same time, we want to keep it very packed. It's very important for you to see everything, ask questions, learn. And I promise you that the moment the session is over, I'll be sharing all the files back with you. I have your email IDs. That way you can A, see the solution, and B, you can also practice if you want to with the case studies, right? Just a minute on who I am and what I do. So some of you might already know me. My name is Havish Madhupati. I run an analytics firm called Havish M Consulting. In short, what we do is work with organizations, helping them do automation, data visualization, and business intelligence. I originally started working with Excel. I've spent about 20 years working on Excel. But over the last few years, a lot of work has started to get shifted to Power BI. In terms of my qualifications, I'm Harvard Online Certified in Data Science, 40 under 40 Analytics. Havish M Consulting is a Microsoft partner. Individually, I am a Microsoft Certified Trainer, Power BI Certified, and Office Master as well. And I was also listed as a 40 under 40 Analytics plus Indian Achievers Award. In terms of the clients with whom I work, it's quite varied. So I work with multiple sectors that don't seem to have any connection to each other. So there's a lot of work that I do in the energy and power space. I work with the oil and gas companies. And in the past, I have also conducted about 250 trainings for the Big Four, primarily for PwC and EY. At the moment, I am doing trainings for D. Shaw, one of the most well-respected and largest IB firms in the world. And I do trainings for their Hyderabad and their New York office. What else will you find on my website? I also have a podcast called Conversations on Data, where I invite senior business leaders from various sectors. And I speak to them about anything and everything related to data, building a corporate career. And then I also sell online courses. Plus, you will find a lot of other stuff. So you will find my dashboard samples that I've created on Power BI and Tableau. And you will also find some case studies that I have prepared on the basis of work done for different clients. So these are all Power BI Tableau dashboards. I don't want to talk too much about it because it's not really relevant to today's session. But if you feel this is of interest to you, definitely go and have a look at the website later. Perfect. With that said, the best way to understand the importance of Vlookup is to look at memes, right? And I think that the moment something becomes popular or a part of culture, there are memes on it, right? And it might seem like a joke, but the fact of the matter is that Excel has over 700 functions in it, and Vlookup is the third most used function in Excel. Let me say that one more time. There are more than 700 functions in Excel, ranging from sum to average to count to indirect to match. And Vlookup is the third most used one. So clearly it's very, very important. Vlookup has been there in Excel for about 30 years now. And that's amazing, right? I mean, the longevity of the function and the fact that this is still one of the most crucial questions that is asked in an interview, to what level all of you are comfortable with Vlookup. So I want to start with a very basic example, and then we will gradually increase the difficulty. Now, those of you who already know basic Vlookup, maybe the first 10-15 minutes for you might be a little boring. I'm just giving you a warning beforehand. But I promise you that as the session progresses, we will be covering a lot of advanced examples as well, right? Broadly, what I plan to cover today is this. So we will be looking at Vlookup with approximate and exact match, how to handle errors, how to use isError, how to get the data from multiple columns, how to use Xlookup, which is not a replacement for Vlookup, but it is a new function that is available on Excel now. We will look at how to get the column name dynamically, how to work with multiple sheets, how to work with multiple workbooks, how to work with unclean data, and how to do joins in Vlookup, similar to on SQL, where we do a inner join, left outer join, full outer join. And finally, how to combine Vlookup with other functions, right? There's a lot of ground that we will be covering. So let's get started. The platform is open. The chat box is open. You can unmute yourself and ask me questions at any point of time. I will try my very best to answer it then and there. So let's start with the very first example. All right. Now, what is the basic premise of a Vlookup? Most of us would already have worked on Vlookup before, but then I believe some of the people who are here today might not be 100% comfortable with it, and it doesn't hurt for us to go through the foundation one more time. So if I have to simplify it in a single sentence, I would say that Vlookup allows you to find the data that you want. That's it, as simple as that. For example, when you go on Gmail, right? When I go to gmail.com and I enter an email ID, let's say like this, and the moment I put in a password, what are the possibilities? Either Google will confirm that, yes, Havish, this is the correct password, and it will allow me to proceed. Or what will happen? It will say wrong password, please check. So what exactly is happening? So you can imagine that there are billions of Gmail IDs out there. And somewhere Google has a very large file, which has one column, which has all the email IDs in it, and then another column, which has all the passwords in it. So the moment I put in my email, h.madhvapati@gmail.com, and I put in my password, what is Google doing at the backend? Vlookup, isn't it? Google basically goes to that Excel file and it says, okay, let me search for h.madhvapati. That is in the first column. And in the next column, it checks if the password that I have entered right now. For example, if I write password as a password, it literally does a lookup. It looks for the password that is in the database. It comes back, checks whether this is the password that Havish has entered, and either gives me a yes or a no, right? The point of showing you this example was to tell you that lookups are around us everywhere. It's just that we don't realize it. Wherever you are putting in a thumbprint or you're putting in a password or a PIN, what is happening? It is looking up your input against the database that is already available, right? Now, going back to our Excel, we have a very simple data set with us. There is a list of customers that we have. These are transactions. You can consider this to be anything. So this could be financial payments. It could be sales transactions. And as a business, what I want to know is the name of the customer. Now, if you look at column F and column G, you will see that this is a list of unique customers that we have. For example, if I look at 12727, that is the ID, you will see that 12727 has purchased not just one time, but 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And the name attached to that ID is Aaron Bergman. Can two people have the same customer ID? Obviously not. Just like two people cannot have the same Aadhaar card. Similarly, two people cannot have the same ID. But can two people have the same name with different customer IDs? Absolutely. For example, maybe 12727 and 30741 are two different IDs, but it just so happens by coincidence that they have the same name. Now, what is the objective right now? Very simple. As a business, I want to know who is this person. For example, if I give the PAN card and I want to know who is the person attached to this, or if I give you the CIN number for a company, I want to know what company is it, right? Now you will say, but Havish, why is it difficult? Like, why can't I just go and apply a filter? And then on the filter, I can just search for 12727 and it tells me Aaron Bergman. That's one way of doing it. Or I can select the column, press Control F, and I can search for 12727 and it tells me Aaron Bergman. Are these difficult approaches to apply a filter and to do a Control F? Not at all. But the problem is you're not going to do this every single time for a new name. See, if you only wanted to find one name, then you could have done this. But what if I ask you to find all these IDs and the corresponding name? That is where it becomes difficult, right? So what we are doing here is I'm searching for this value, the one I've highlighted. So we're searching for the ID. Now, where will you search for it? In the entire column F. Why the column F? Because the column F has all the values in it. And where is the result? In the adjacent column, which is column G. So let me do it one more time. So when I do a VLOOKUP, it asks us for 4 things, right? Number 1, what is the lookup value? That means which ID are we searching for, which is 12727, comma. Now it says, fine, Havish, you want to search for this ID, but it has to exist somewhere, right? In a database. So where is the database that has been given to us? It is in column F. Now the problem is that if I only select column F, then there is no answer. Like I know there is an ID in column F somewhere, but where is the answer? We are not interested in the ID, we're interested in the name, remember? So I will select column G as well. So what is column F? The one with the ID. And what is column G? The one with the name. Now think of it this way. There are 2 columns we have, which is column F, which is column number 1, and column G, which is column number 2. Where is the result? The result is in the second column. That is why you notice that the column index number is 2. Now this last part is a little tricky because it asks you for either a true or a false. It's very simple. 99.9% of the time, which one will you use? You will use the second one, which is a false. What does it even mean? The exact match means that we are searching for an ID exactly. That means if I give you an ID 12727, will you be happy with 12726 because it's very close to 12727? Of course not. It doesn't make any sense, right? If I ask you to search for a roll number 1001, why will you give me the result as 1002? Will you not search for the exact roll number? That is why we have to write false. And here is the result. Let me put a screenshot as well. Right. Yeah, this is a very basic VLOOKUP, everyone. So I don't want to spend too much time on it, but if there's any question, I'll be happy to answer that.
Hi, Havish. So actually, I didn't get your point why you mentioned these 2 numbers.
Sure. So let me explain it this way. Let me just open my annotation tool. Okay. So I want to put 2 numbers here. So let us say column F is 1 and column G is 2, right? Now, if I ask you that in the entire table, which is FG, which one is it that we want? You want the second one, isn't it? You want the name. If I make it 1, can you guess what will happen?
It will get the customer ID.
It will get the customer ID, but that doesn't make any sense, right? Because we already know the ID. Because we want the value in the second column, we are putting in a 2.
Oh,
just to give you an example, imagine there was a region here called North. Now, if you did not want the name you want to the region, I will select F, G, and H, and I'll select 3, right? So the point here is that the letter of the column, everyone, makes absolutely no sense. Never say, Havish, but column F is the 6th column and column G is the 7th column. You will say that column F is the first column and column G is the second column. So there are 4 parts. If I can show you, this is the lookup value. This is the table array where we're searching. Then you have the column number. Column number means the column from where you want the result. It could be the second column. It could be the 20th column. It could be the 100th column as well. And then finally the range lookup. So if anybody asks you why are we using a false, simple 1-line answer. We are using a false because I want to search for the exact customer ID, not an approximate customer ID. In what case will we use an approximate? I'll cover that in the next example, right? Okay, so going forward, here what we have is we have the ID and we have the sales amount, right? Now, this is a typical R&R example. Everybody has a certain sales value, 500, 240, 24, 575, like that. And I, as an organization, want to categorize them into 5 groups. So the groups are A, B, C, D, and E, right? Now, one way of doing this would be to write an if statement, right? But the problem is it will be a very long formula because I'll have to write it like this. I'm sure all of you must have done it at some point or the other. Haven't you done this where you say if C7 is less than 50, then the answer is A. Then you say, okay. Another if C7 is less than 201, then and this is crazy, right? Because this is such a long, needlessly complex formula. What is the correct way of doing it? Please watch. First, I will give my minimum. That means for a customer to get an incentive of A, what is the minimum they require to do? 0. For B, they require 51. Then you have 201. Then you have 401. And then you have 501, right? This should be 401, right? And this will be 500 plus. Okay. Why exactly are we doing it? Because now I can say Vlookup. We are searching for C7. Now, if I select column F, G, and H, okay, and I put in column number 3 and a false, can somebody tell me why are we getting an NA? Like 500 should have come as an E, right? Isn't it? Or rather as a D. But why are we getting an error?
It's finding for an exact match, right?
Exactly. So the moment you say I'm searching for 500, in column F, is there any value which is exactly 500? No. Imagine somebody had a 201, the person would have got a C. But if it is 202, the person gets an NA. Now, logically, we know what we want. We know that everybody from a 0 to a 50 will be an A, 51 to 200 will be a B. So all we have to do is we have to change it to the true option. And now see what happens. If I copy it down, everyone, do you see this? 240 is a C. What is the logic? 201 to 400 is a C. But the moment a person gets 401, it becomes a...
One question is it possible to sort that my incentive line to descending order rather than in ascending order?
That's a very good point. The minimum values that I've written here, the new column I've created, mandatorily has to be in an ascending order. Right?
Ascending order.
It has to be in an ascending order. See, it can be a negative number. It can be -100, 0, 100. That is okay. The interval size could be different. 0, 50, 500, 5,000, 50,000. That is also okay. But the order has to be an ascending order. Because that is how Excel will search, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up till infinity.
Thank you.
Right? Okay, one more thing. A lot of you might be used to using a 1 and a 0. So remember, a false is the same as a 0. Same thing. There's no difference. And in approximate, a true is the same as a 1. Now you might say, but why are there 2 different ways of doing it? How do we remember this? You just have to remember it. There is no logic behind it as to why one of them is a 1 and the other one is a 0. It's just arbitrary. It doesn't have any meaning to it. It's just like saying half of you are in group A, half of you are in group B. What is the logic behind group A and group B? No logic. I have just randomly decided that one of this is 1 and the other one is a 0. Right? Now, I'll tell you why we don't use it very often. I'm sure none of you would have used Vlookup with approximate match. The reason is that there are much, much better ways of doing it. Can I show you? Please watch. Rather than writing this Vlookup, I could have also said, let me just create a copy of this, if that's okay. So I'll just shift it to the right and let's change it to G, H, and I, right? Please watch. Another way of doing this would be to use an if-s, which is a much better function than an if. If-s is very simple. What it says is that if my sales value, which is C7, is less than 51, then the answer will be A, comma, I don't need to put another if. If C7 is less than 201, then the answer is B. If C7 is less than 401, then the answer is C, and you get the idea. Now, one more time, if C7 is less than 501, then we have a D, and otherwise, if C7 is greater than or equal to 501, then the answer is A. Do you see this, everyone? Exactly the same answer, I'll just take a screenshot here. And this is much more readable because, this doesn't require a lot of effort. If you want to use Vlookup approximate match, first you will have to create this G column, which in itself is very confusing because we might make a mistake here or there. So the best way to not have to go through this trouble is to completely ignore Vlookup approximate match. When I work with clients and they say, Havish, I want you to teach my team how to work with Vlookup approximate, I tell them, forget there is an approximate match because there are so many better ways of doing it. For example, this one, because in this formula, you don't need to create this column, right? Again, my job is to tell you there are two different ways of doing it. Whichever one you have a preference for, you can go ahead and do that, right? Okay, so I'll wait for a minute if there's any question. Otherwise, we will continue with how to handle errors in Vlookup.
Is this a new function in Excel 2019 or 365?
Yes. So IFS was introduced in 2019 Microsoft Office. So if you're working on 2013, 2016, you will not have it. But 2019, 2021, Microsoft Office 365, all the three have this IFS.
2019 onwards.
2019 onwards, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Right. And I hope you see that this is so much better than writing if, right? I think we're all guilty of that. Some point or the other, we have all written those complex if conditions, which is okay, but now you don't need to because a lot of it can be replaced with ifs, right? Okay, I'll just hurry a little bit. The idea is not to complete things fast, but I want to cover a wide variety of topics. And in any case, I'll be sharing this file back with you. So you have all the time in the world to go and practice, right? Okay, now here's the problem. I want to find the customer name and I want to find the customer ID not yet updated. Let me say that one more time. There is an ID and there is a name. We know that 12727 is Aaron Bergman, correct? But the problem is that there are some IDs here. If you look carefully, I have a 10456. Now the problem is there is a transaction for this ID 10456, but the ID has not been updated in the database. Happens all the time, doesn't it? There is a transaction that is happening for a vendor, but at the back end, the other team has not updated it in the database. Now, the problem is that when I write a VLOOKUP, nothing special. So I'm just writing B7, table array FNG, column number 2, and false. I hope by now all of you have confidence doing this. You will notice that when I drag it down, do you see this? There is no answer here, NA, and there is no answer here. Why are we getting a NA, which means it could not find an answer? Because 34689 doesn't exist. Similarly, 10456 doesn't exist. So how do we handle this? Very simple. We just put in if error. So we say that if there is an error, what does the error signify? That if this ID has not been updated, what do I want to say? I will like to say not updated in my database like this. So let me show you the final formula. I know it looks a little long, but it's very logical in terms of what we are doing. Like this, right? So if I have to explain it, I will say that we are using a VLOOKUP to find the name of that customer ID. In case the customer has not been updated in the database, I don't want to show an NA. That's very misleading and ambiguous. What I would like to do is to give a more meaningful result, and where we would like to say not updated in the database, right? Yeah, how to use VLOOKUP in different sheets is something I will be covering a little later, not right now. Great. Any question on this, anyone? All good? Okay. A small variation on this. Now, I want to do the opposite. For example, imagine your manager comes to you and says that, Havish, there are some transactions. Only tell me how many of these IDs have not been updated. That means wherever the ID is present, that's okay. We don't want to know the name of that customer. We only want to know how many of these IDs are not updated in the database. So how will I do this? We will start with the VLOOKUP, right? I'm just applying it on the entire column FNG, right? And column number 2, and we are using an exact match, right? In fact, not to confuse you, let me do it with B7 only. Okay. Now you notice that when I drag it down, did you see what happened? We are getting a NA and a NA. But this time the requirement is, I don't want to see the names. I just want to see not updated, not updated. Everything else should be a different result. So what will I do? Very smartly, I will say is error. What does it mean? Is error will only give you two results, which is a binary result, either true or false. Wherever the name is there, it will give you a false. Wherever the name is not there, it will give you a true. So you notice, now it gives me a false, which means that the name is present, and it gives me a true, which tells me that the name is not present, right? Now, how do we get the result we want? I will just say that if this value is true, then I would like to say that not updated. Otherwise, I will like to say updated. Very cool, right? You know, this is quite an interesting example. A lot of people have this requirement, and very few people know how to get this result. Think about it. I know most of you who already have been working on Vlookup know how to do an if error, correct? But if you don't want the result, you just want to get a categorization, you know, a bifurcation, how many are updated, how many are not updated. That's quite tricky to do. And this, everyone, is the correct way of doing it. Right? So just think about this example for a moment and tell me if it makes sense, if you have any questions on this. Let me also see the chat window. As the fuzzy lookup, I have this beautiful video on YouTube where I'll tell you how does it work, but I'll not cover it today because it will take some time, but I promise you that I will share the video link with you. In fact, let me also write it down so I don't forget to do it. One moment. Yeah, but thanks for telling me. I'll also tell you how to use fuzzy lookup. Yeah. So it looks a little odd, doesn't it? Like the first time when you see the formula, it doesn't seem very simple. It's like there's a VLOOKUP and there's an is error and there is an if, but I hope you see why we are doing it, isn't it? Ask yourself that if I did not tell you how to do it, how would you have done it, right? If I ask you a simple thing, just give me a demarcation. How many are updated? How many are not updated? It's quite tricky. It's not that simple, right? So this is a standard generalized way of doing it. This will work with any data set that you have, no matter how large, complex, simple it is. If is error, VLOOKUP will always tell you the not updated versus the updated, right? Okay, moving forward. This I can guarantee almost none of you would know. If I want to get two results, that means I have my ID, but I want to know the name of the customer, also the market. Can somebody tell me how would I do it? See, I'm writing my VLOOKUP. So B7 in table array F to I. What will be the column number for customer name? Anyone? If I've selected column F to I, 4 columns, and I want to get the name, what column number should I give?
It will be 2.
Okay. And what type of range lookup? False?
Exact
Everyone
match.
agrees? Exact match. Now this is okay, but how do you get the market? This is the name, right? But now you're on the market. So what will you do?
In a curly bracket, we can present 2, 3.
Right. So not 2,3, 2,4, because we want the second and the fourth column, right?
Sorry, yeah.
Now, most of us are used to doing this, and there's nothing wrong with it. I have done it this way for many, many years. So I would copy the formula, right? And then I will manually change that 2 into a 4, isn't it? I'm sure all of you do this and you get the market. But I'll tell you a better way of doing this. Watch. Now we have something called dynamic arrays, which means that I can give in a curly bracket 2, 4. How cool is that? Amazing, right? If I want 2 columns, the second and the fourth column, I don't have to write the same formula 2 times and then modify it. I can just put 2, 4 in a curly bracket and voila, you get 2 results. How cool is that? Now, if you said 2, 3, do you see this? Now it's going to give you 2 and 3, customer name and region, right? And then you can copy it down and you get this. Now, remember, this feature is called dynamic arrays. It will only work if you have Microsoft Office 365. If you're working on older versions of Excel, then when you write it, you will get an error because this is not supported on older versions of Excel. Yeah, I think somebody has raised their hand. I'm sorry, can you just ask your question?
Yes, sir. So are we using the curly braces to represent the array?
100%. This is an array, right? An array means a list of items. We want 2 items, isn't it? You want the second and the fourth column. So it's a curly bracket. Absolutely.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Asta has asked another question. I'm going to write it down, which is not something I'll be covering, but if time permits, I'll definitely speak about it. How to work with a table, right? So this is very simple, everyone. I don't think there's anything confusing about it. It's a normal VLOOKUP, but it's going to save you so much time because you don't have to copy the formula 5 times. You can just put all the numbers you want in any order. You could have also written 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 2. Any combination will work. There is no limit on the number of columns that you're writing. Okay. Now let's come to Xlookup. Xlookup was introduced very recently in 2018, if I remember correctly, and it is not a replacement for VLOOKUP. Let me say that one more time. While Xlookup is better in a lot of cases, it is not a replacement for VLOOKUP. You still have to learn VLOOKUP. It's still a very important skill in Excel. Xlookup is just better in certain ways. VLOOKUP also has its own advantages, right? So I will not go into a deep dive discussing with you for 30 minutes which one is better, but I want to show you how Xlookup works. Now in Xlookup, you will notice the arguments are a little different. We have the lookup value, which is B7. In Xlookup, it doesn't ask you to select the entire table. In the case of VLOOKUP, first we selected the table and then the column, isn't it? Now it asks you for the lookup array and the return array. So it's much more simplified. What is the lookup array? Column F, comma. What is the return array? Column G. How simple is that? And you get the result. There are other arguments here as well, but I'll not be covering that right now. So there is an inbuilt if error in Xlookup. There is an exact and an approximate match. In fact, there are more types of matches in Xlookup. And there is a search mode, which allows you to search from top to bottom or bottom to top. You can go back and explore this in detail later, but for now, I'm not going to cover it. But this is the basic VLOOKUP, or rather the basic Xlookup that we are using now. Any questions on this, anyone?
No.
Okay, so quick recap. There are 3 parts to the formula. Let me highlight it. B7 is the lookup value. What are you searching for? Now, where are you searching? That is a lookup array, which is column F, which has all the possible customer IDs in it. Now, obviously, you need a result column as well, right? Where is the result? In column G. Simple. In VLOOKUP, I would have selected F and G and put column number 2. Here, I don't have to do that. I can select them separately, which I feel is a much better approach because you get independent control over it. Now, you don't have to note and remember and put the column number because the chance of a mistake is higher when you put a column number, right? Okay, now let's also see how Xlookup can be used with multiple columns, okay? Now, there is a limitation. In Xlookup, if I want to get 2 columns, it's very simple. I can just select my lookup value. I can select FGHI. Sorry, I'm only selecting F because that's the customer ID. And in return array, I can select G and H, right? Now you will say, Havish, this is very simple, right? You're selecting G and H. The problem is that Xlookup can only look at adjacent columns. So if you want G and I, you can't do that. Let me say that one more time. If you want H and I can do that. I can write H colon I. It works. If you want GHI, that also is possible. I can give 3 columns. One moment. I can give G and H and I. But the problem is that if you want to give G and I as the input, you can't do that. And that is where VLOOKUP is better. Remember? Because in VLOOKUP, I have complete control. I can select any 2 columns that I want. So if you look in the previous example, I have given 2 and 4. I don't want 3. The problem with Xlookup is that if you want 2 and 4, that's not possible. You will have to get 2, 3, and 4 together, right? But otherwise, it's fairly straightforward. I don't think there is anything confusing about this. Right? Very simple, everyone. Okay. Now let's come to the match function. let me give you a use case. Why do we want to do this? Now imagine that you're writing Vlookup and you want to get the customer name. What would you do? You would say equal to Vlookup. You look at the B7 value. You will look at column E, F, G, H. And if you want the name, then we know we want to put in a 2, which is the column number, and a false, correct? And it gives you the name. Now imagine that suddenly I say, no, I don't want the name, I want the region. Now you'll have to go to the formula and change this 2 to 3, isn't it? Is it difficult? Not really. But is it practical for you to change it every single time? Not at all. You want it to be more flexible, you want it to be dynamic, and you want it to happen much faster. So what do? I'm going to break my formula into 4 lines by pressing Alt-Enter, like this, right? Now think of it this way. Why did I have to tell Excel that the column number is 3? Because Excel doesn't know which column we want, right? Excel says, Havish, there are 4 columns you have selected, E, F, G, H. So I can select all the 4, or rather any of the 4. That is why we have to put in a number 3. But what if there was a way in which I can ask Excel to find the column number? So what do we do here? Please watch. I'm going to write a function called match. Let me just put everyone on mute for a moment. Okay. Now what is match? It's like a match the following. Imagine that there are 3 baskets with 3 fruits in it. There are apples and bananas and oranges. And I ask you, which one of these 3 baskets has bananas? Very simple, right? So you will say if there is apples and bananas and oranges, bananas is in the second basket, apples is in the first basket, oranges in the third basket. That is what match does. Match says that if I'm searching for a value C6, what is C6? That is the heading I want. That is one of the columns I want. Where will I search? I will search in all the 4 columns. Now, customer name is one of these 4, right? Either the first or the second or the third or the 4th one. So all we have to do is we have to give it an exact match, which is a 0, and it will tell me that it is the second column. So if I change the customer name to region, it will become the 3rd column and market will become the 4th column. You see this, everybody, how nice this is? Let me show you the formula as well for the match. Now, all we have to do is I have to replace the 3 with a match function. And I will say that we are matching C6 with a $sign because we want to lock it in all the 4 columns with an exact match. And this is beautiful. You know why? Because the moment let me copy it down, it gives you the region, right? If you change it to the customer name, your results change. If you change it to the market, your results change. Do you see this? How cool is that? So let me take a screenshot and see if there's anything you would like to ask me. Right? We don't need this, so let me keep it here. So in 1 line, what is the explanation? We are using a basic VLOOKUP, nothing very fancy. We only want 1 column as a result at a time. But rather than providing Excel with the column number, rather than me telling Excel we want the 2nd or the 3rd or the 4th or the 17th column, I'm telling Excel that you go and find out which column number it is. Is it the 2nd or the 3rd or the 4th, right? This is a match. One more point, match cannot be used with a Xlookup because match will search for a number, right? But Xlookup is not a number. It is a column reference. Think about it, but you will not be able to use match with Xlookup. Xlookup has another function called Xmatch, but I'll not be covering that today. You can go and read about it later, right? Any questions on this, anyone? Let me get some water as well while you're thinking. See, when you're working with a small data set, maybe with 3-4 columns in it, using the VLOOKUP with the match will not be worth the trouble because you already know the column number is 2, 3, or 4, isn't it? But when you're working with a large data, and I'm sure all of you know what I mean with 14, 15, 20, 50 columns in it, at that point, it is very, very helpful for you to get the column number dynamically. Another advantage is that tomorrow, if the column changes, if somebody moves the column into a different place, you don't have to change the column number. For example, if tomorrow, let us say that somebody kept the region in the second column and the customer name in the third column. Do you see this? I don't have to change my formula. On the other hand, if you're using Vlookup, then you will have to manually go and say, okay, now my third column has become the second column. Right now, why don't I have to do it? Because Excel is taking care of that for us. Excel will automatically understand that the position of the column has changed and we don't have to do anything, right?
Okay, so match does the same thing vertically or horizontally. It does the same thing. I mean, finds the
100%,
relative position.
100%. Can I give you an example, everyone? So let's say I have A, B, C, D, E, right? And I want to find, let's say C. How will I do it? Very simple. I'll say match. I'm searching for C in A, B, C, D, E with a 0. Can you tell me what will be the result?
3.
Simple. Now, what is the sister formula for match? Match tells you the position of a value. The sister formula is something called position. Okay, please watch. So if I know 3 is the position, then I can write index, and index will tell me, comma, actually it will be the third column. So if I say 3, it will tell me that C is in the third column. So if I say 2 or 1 or 5, so what does match do, everyone? Let me show the formula here. Match tells you that out of these 5 values, A, B, C, D, E, C is the third value. What does index do? The opposite. Index tells you that which value is in the 5th position or the 3rd position, right? Like this. Hope that makes sense, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Right? So you can take a screenshot of this if you want. Match tells you the position, right? Index tells you the value in that position, right? Okay. So let's go back and look at a slightly more difficult example now, okay? Now that we've done the basic, let me warn you, this part is not going to be easy, right? This part is going to be quite difficult, but this is practical VLOOKUP. This is what I do with clients on a daily basis. And I'm sure all of you will love the example because it's extremely relatable to what you would face in the corporate world, right? Okay. Now let's look at the problem. We have some orders that have to be dispatched. So let us say this is the inventory that we have to dispatch. And this is the dispatched orders, right? So this is coming from the sales team. So the sales team says that we have to dispatch all these orders by tomorrow, or rather by today. But the warehouse tells us that, I'm sorry, but we have only dispatched these orders. Now, as a person, I have to find out how many orders have been dispatched and how many are pending, isn't it? So think of this like a problem with Amazon. Amazon has lakhs of orders that go out. So obviously, some of them get delayed, some of them come a day early. So they want to get a status, isn't it? So at the back end, are they not doing the same thing? They know that there is an order that was scheduled to be dispatched today, but it hasn't happened. So they need to get a status on it, right? Let's see how I do it. Now, in this example, I'll tell you how to combine VLOOKUP with other functions, right? Okay, now let's please see. Please watch. Is 1521 dispatched already? How do I know that? You can clearly see that 1521 is an order and it has been dispatched, right? Okay, what about 138688 has been dispatched? Let's look at something that has not been dispatched. For example, if you look at 167164, we were supposed to dispatch the order, but we haven't done that. That's why, okay, I'm sorry, that one appears, but let me try to find a different one. Let's look at, hold on. Maybe this one? Yeah. If you look at CA 2014107727, we have not dispatched the order. Now, please see what I'm going to do. The first thing I'll do is I want to get the number. Right now, we have a CA 13 dash. We don't like all that. So very smartly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that I would like to substitute, everyone, please watch carefully. I would like to substitute my dash, okay, with a blank. So what that will do is it will remove both the dashes, both the hyphen, but that's not what we want. I just want to remove the first one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, let me remove only the first instance. That means only the first hyphen will be removed, not the second one. So you will get this. Let me zoom in. Do you see the formula, everyone? Let me put some spaces so you can see this clearly. So what are we saying here? We're saying that we know there are two hyphens that are there in the data, but I don't want to remove the second one. I just want to remove the first one. So we will get a value like this. How cool is that? But how does that help us? Now I need to find the position of this entire text. So what do? Now I'll say that, tell me the position. So I want to know, find a dash in this data. So what will be the result? Think about it. The result will be 5. Why 5? Because we had CA13-1521, isn't it? So we know that 5 is the position of the dash. But if you look at the previous one, what is the position of the dash? It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, not 5, right? So when I copy it down, this 7 is actually not 7. It should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's why we have to add a 1 to it, right? Now, what is this doing? It is telling me the position of the second dash. Now, why is that important? Because now I can simply say, let me find the length of the entire ID. And from the length, we will subtract what? We will subtract the position of the second dash. So the result will be like this. Right? Now, what does this number signify? So if I can just show you once again. Okay. We are getting a 6, right? 6 means CA-13 dash. Now, what is the length of the entire text? It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We want the result to be 4. So what are we doing here? One more time, I will say the length of C6 minus, let me put everything in a parentheses, and it gives me 4. So this tells me the length of that last number. Do you see it? 1521, 138,688, 108,966. And finally, I can say that from the right, I just want 4 characters. Now, I know this is quite a complex formula, but there's a reason I wanted to show it to you, isn't it, everyone? The idea was that I wanted you to see, one second. I wanted you to see how we can get this last part. See, this is some homework for you. I'm not telling you this is the only way of doing it. You can go back and try to figure it out yourself. If you only want to take out that last part, which is 1521, 138,688, 108,966, how will you do that? What have I done? I first substituted the first dash with a blank. Then I found out the position of the second dash. Then I have taken the entire length and then subtracted that position of the dash. Whatever is remaining is the number of characters in the last number. And then I've done a write function. But this is not a number. So if I try to find the sum, this will not give me a result because it's a text value. So I'll have to use a value function to convert everything into a number. And now with all this effort, you can get the final result because now I can simply write Vlookup. What are we searching for? This entire result. Where are we searching? In column G. We are searching in column number 1 and we're doing an exact match. And this, everybody, gives you the result you wanted, isn't it? This is what we wanted. So now I can just use an is error. So is error. So I'll get true and false. And I just have to say that if my is error, I will say pending. Otherwise, I'll say dispatched. So this clearly tells me how many of my orders have been dispatched, how many are pending. This is dynamic. So tomorrow, if one of these orders get dispatched, 108,966, 108,966, do you see what happened? It automatically becomes dispatched. I have taught Amazon and Flipkart in the past, and trust me, this is exactly what we end up doing on Excel. Now you might say, but Havish, why are we doing it on Excel? Don't they have more sophisticated systems? Don't they have a SQL on which we do it? You have to think about it. Yes, every large company will be using multiple tools and multiple systems. But at the end of the day, there is a lot of work that will still continue to happen on Excel. The management graduates and the business folks don't know how to work on SQL. They will not be able to connect to the server directly. And in any case, even on SQL, you will still have to write a query. It's not one click. somebody still has to build the logic, isn't it? So this is literally what I teach at every single corporate training, right? Sure, the example might be a little more difficult. It might be a little simpler. That's not the point. But the point is that for those of you who are thinking, Havish, this is such a complex example. You made it complex just for the sake of it. Do we really need to do all these things? 100% yes. You have to do these things and learn to build these complex formulas. Obviously, in the beginning, you don't have to do everything in one go. Maybe you can build 5 formulas and do it step by step. But once you gain confidence, obviously you should try to combine everything into a single formula, right? I'll just take a screenshot of this and let me see if there are any questions. See, again, you can go back through the formula later, right? I know in such a short time, you will not understand it 100%, but the main purpose of showing you this was to tell you that as a data analytics consultant, what is my job? Why do organizations hire me and pay me money if they already have people who work on Excel? Because this is what I do for them. I help make them their processes more efficient, reduce errors, reduce the turnaround time, right? By building formulas like this. Okay.
So one doubt.
Yep.
I mean, when we see this, I mean, as you build the formula just now in front of us, it's a bit what I would say. I can get how the formula is working, but what kind of thought process and logic we need to build to make these kind of complex formulas? I mean, how can we start doing this kind of things?
Sure. Can I give an example? Let me just answer others' questions first. So Ganesh mentioned text to column. See, everyone, text to column delimiter is not a good idea. I'll tell you why. If you're thinking that, Havish, why can't we just take the data, right? And then I can go to my data view. I can select text to column and I can use the delimiter. For next, I can select a dash and then I can do. See, the problem is this is manual, isn't it? Every time you will get new transactions, somebody has to open the file and do this manually, isn't it? But the advantage of doing it this way is that it's a one-time effort. Sure, the first time somebody has to build the formula, somebody has to test the formula, but once it is built and it works, it's done. I can just let everybody in my team use the same formula with a copy and paste. I don't have to teach people what to do. I don't have to tell people, do text to column. This is step 1, this is step 2, this is step 3. You get my point, right? Text to column, everyone, is a manual process. If you look at this part, sure, for the same part, I could have also written 1521 and I could have pressed Control E, which is flash fill, and it would have separated all the numbers. Now you will say, Havish, when there's such an easy way of doing it, why go through all the hassle of doing substitute, find, length? Because this is not dynamic. If tomorrow one of the values changes, my result will not change. You get my point, right? On the other hand, in this case, if tomorrow one of the values changes, my result will change as well. So see, there is always a trade-off. If you're doing a task for a single time, if it's a one-time requirement, sure, you can do it manually because you're interested in the result, not in the process. But typically you're interested more in the process because your manager says, I don't want you to spend 30 minutes every single day cleaning the data and getting the result. It's better to spend 2 hours, build the formula one time so that you can end up using it for the next couple of years. Agree with me, right? So that's the job of me as a consultant for which I get hired. I don't get hired to do one-time tasks, right? I get hired to build efficiencies and processes in organizations, right? Okay. Now, I just wanted to tell you one way of understanding this logical thinking, okay? Please watch this. One moment. Let me open my ribbon. So on Insert Add-ins, there is a free tool available on Microsoft, which is called the Formula Forge. I want to show that to you. So I go to Get Add-ins, and there is something called the Formula Forge, which is this one. Okay. It's free of cost. The moment I add it, I will get an option in my formulas tab called Get Formula. What it does is it opens up your formula in a tree view. You will understand it when I show you. Especially those of you who are engineers would love this process, right? Because that's the way you work, right? In a network or in a tree diagram. So the moment I go to Get Formula, please see what is happening. Let me just make it a little larger so that all of you can see. Do you see this, everyone? This is very cool, right? So this is opening up the entire formula as a tree diagram.
Flowchart.
How cool is that? And the flowchart tells you exactly what you're doing. Shall I walk you through it? Let's go step by step. What is the first thing we did? We are going bottom up, right? First, we substituted in the CA131521, which had 2 hashes. Remember this one in C6, I replaced the hyphen with a blank, only the first one. So what was the result? CA13-1521, correct? Okay. Now what did I do? I wanted to find the position of the hyphen. So what is the position? It is the 5th character. Then I added 1 to it, so it became the 6th character. Now when I found the length of the entire text string, it was how much? The length of the entire -6 will give me 4. 10 minus 6 is 4. Now when I take from the right of this text, the last 4 characters, the result will be 1521. And when I convert it into a number, it will again remain 1521. Now I'm doing a VLOOKUP on 1521. In column F, column number 1, false. So the result will be a false. What does that signify? It signifies that this order has not been dispatched, right? So the answer will either be pending or dispatched. Does it help everyone to be able to see the formula like this?
Yes, sir.
It's really beautiful. Thank you.
Okay. Now you might say, but Havish, if this is such a cool feature, it's a free tool, why don't organizations use it? I don't know. This feature has been around for a number of years. None of my clients know about it or are using it. You know, I think this is a problem with everybody, including me and you. We always tend to get very happy by doing things in a complex manner. You know, we get off on it. We feel that we first make the problem complex, and then we go and start telling people, see, I had so much trouble solving that problem. The reality is that we never spend time simplifying the problem and searching for ways to make it easier, like this one, right? I can tell you none of my clients knows or works on this tool, right? And the moment I show it to them, they're like, this is a game changer. This just completely changes the way we work with formulas, isn't it? It's so beautiful. Okay. Now, there was one more question, which was, can we use find to find the second occurrence of a character? Unfortunately, no, Astha. And everyone, that's the problem, right? If you think about it, why did I do this substitute? Because I can't find the second hyphen, right? If I could have found the second hyphen directly, then there was no problem. I don't have to substitute the first one. But that is a limitation with Excel. If you look at the find function, in the find function, it only says it will find something, but it will not allow you to start searching from the right or the second one. You can only find from the left. So that's the limitation of the function as such. Okay. Now, let's also see how to work with unclean data, everyone. Okay. Now, the problem is that when I do a VLOOKUP, you will notice that I'm looking up C6, C22. What is my table array? It is column G, and my return array is column H. I'm sorry, I've done something incorrectly. Just a moment. Not a VLOOKUP, I'm doing an Xlookup. My bad. Now, do you see that some of these names or other IDs are coming as in NA? What does that signify? So if you look at this 1637548, obviously it is an NA because the value doesn't appear, right? What about this 1001514002? That's very odd. This is the same as this one, isn't it? Now you might say, Havish, the reason it is not able to pick the ID is because the type of the character, the data type is not the same. This is a number stored as a text. This is a number. But what about this one? Look at this. This one, just a moment. Hold on. Okay, look at this one. I'm not able to find the result I was looking for. Just a moment. So NA. Okay. So if I convert this into a number, you notice that it works. But if you look at this 9495111, again, you notice here, it is working despite the fact that it is a number stored as a text. So my point is that it's very unreliable and you're not to blame, because if the data has been given to you in this manner, what do you do but to handle it, right? Okay. Naveen, can we get the flowchart in older versions of Excel? I think so, because as long as the store is available to you, it has not been blocked by your IT team, you should be able to install it. Should not be a problem. But I can't guarantee that. You will have to check that, right? So if you can just go to insert and then go to add-ins, if you're able to open the store, then you will be able to get that add-in as well, right? Anyway, so we want to solve this problem, isn't it? Please watch, everyone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an Xlookup with a value. Now, what does it mean? It means that we are converting all of these into a number. Now, you might say, but Havish, aren't these numbers already? For example, if I write 100, right, and I write 100 like this, and I write 100. Now, the problem is that when I try to find the sum, do you see this? It only gives me 200. Why is that? Because the 100 in the middle is not actually a number. It is a text value. Now, if you convert this into a number, then you get 300. But if somebody ignores the error, there's a big, big problem. Because when somebody looks at this, what will they think? They will think that the formula is correct, right? And they will believe in the result without realizing that there's a problem in the data type. So what should we do? The correct way of handling this problem is to first do a value, which will convert everything into a number, and then find the sum. So now you notice it will give me 300. So one line explanation. Value converts a number which is stored as a text into a number. So look at the explanation here. It says that value converts a text that has been stored as a number into a number, right? Now let's solve this. So it's very simple. And it's a very, very common requirement that I have given from clients. So we're doing an Xlookup with a value on the entire customer ID column. Now, what is the lookup array? There also I will apply a value. So I'll apply a value on my entire column G, and my result is in column H. And now you notice, think about it. Yes, you are getting some errors, but look at this part. Despite the fact that the 402 here is a text and the 402 here is a number, I'm still getting the answer. How cool is that, right? And that is exactly what we wanted, right? This is a text, this is a number, still getting the answer. Now, why are there still some errors? Those are the genuine errors. These are the IDs which actually do not exist in the database. So 1637 doesn't exist, or 156 doesn't exist, right? So just to show you the formula, I can just put in an if error, and we can say does not exist. And let me take a screenshot for everybody's reference. And here we go, right? Like this. So what is the recap? Whenever you have a data set in which the numbers might not be in the correct format, either in the lookup column or in my table array, what do? Do not use Vlookup, because Vlookup cannot do this. You will have to use Xlookup. You could have used index match as well, but now that we have Xlookup, I would suggest that you use this and not index match. And basically we are converting everything into a number in both column G and C6C22, and the result will come, right? Any questions on this, anyone? Otherwise, we'll go to our final example in this working book, and then we will go to multiple sheets and multiple workbooks, right? So anything on this, anyone? All right. So the final example in this workbook, after this, I will be covering how to do Vlookup on multiple workbooks and how to do Vlookup on multiple worksheets, right? Please watch. Now, we have the data for the previous month and the current month. It could be previous year, current year. It could be before campaign, after campaign. It could be old employees, new employees. Basically, there is a before and an after. Now, if I ask you a very simple thing, if I say, can you tell me how many of these customers are present in both the previous month and the current month? Let me say that one more time, that the customer is an active customer, is a loyal customer. The employee is still working in the organization. There are a lot of use cases, right? We are still selling the product in the previous month and in the current month. It seems very easy. It's actually not that easy. The problem is that if I do a Vlookup Okay. And I'm searching for the values in column D, and I'm looking at 1 and I'm looking at false. It tells me there are some names and there are some NA values. Can somebody tell me what does the NA signify?
Name mismatch.
No. Not a name mismatch. It tells me something else. NA for a Justin tells me that Justin had purchased in the previous month and Justin was a customer in the previous month, but in the current month,
Not purchased.
not purchased. Now, this is very important because whenever you're trying to determine customer loyalty, a Swiggy wants to know, has Havish purchased in the previous month and in the current month? Don't you get messages where you get a Marks and Spencer SMS saying, we haven't seen you for the last 6 months? How do they know that you're not purchased for the last 6 months? Because this is exactly what they're doing, right? They're looking at your previous data and they're trying to figure out that, okay, you did make a purchase, right, in the past, but you have not made a purchase in the previous month or in the last 6 months. So what we want to do is, I want to know not the NA values. NA are people who have left. I don't want to know who they are. I want to know the other names, which means these are the loyal, active customers, isn't it? Now you will say, Havish, but you have already solved the answer. I can apply a header, right? Then I can do a filter and get the result. But that's not very, it's not a very nice approach, right? It's very manual. I would like to get one formula that will give me the result. Okay, let's watch. So we've already done this, the Vlookup. I would like to convert my errors. So I will use a is error, which we have already done before. And that will give me false and true. Now, can you tell me who are the loyal customers, the true or the false? Think about it. Who are the loyal customers, the true ones or the false ones?
False ones.
The false ones, right? Because the true ones are the people who are getting an error. That means these people who are true have not made a purchase in the current month. So I would like to reverse my result because I don't want my loyal customers to be a false, right? I want my loyal customers to be a true. How do I reverse the result? Very simple. We will just write a not, right? Very simple. And that will reverse the result, true and false. And finally, I can now say that I want to apply a filter, okay, on my names. And I only want to see the true values, not the false values. And the result will be these. I will also do a unique. So it tells me who the unique customers are. So let me just take a screenshot. So basically what we are doing in this standardized formula, everyone, is that in one single formula, I'm able to know who are my loyal customers. How cool is that? This, everybody, is my loyal customer. How do I prove that to you? Imagine that Justin actually makes a purchase in the current month. You see, Justin now becomes a loyal as well. We call this, so there are different terms associated with it. We call it customer loyalty, customer attrition, customer retention, customer cohort, right? Repeat customer, lost customer, new customer. This is what I'm explaining here. How do you find loyal customers in a single formula? I know it's quite a bit because we have a Vlookup and is error, a not, a filter, and a unique, but it's a standardized way of doing it. If you were to do the same thing in SQL, this is what we call an inner join, okay? Not to complicate things too much, if you do an inner join in SQL, this is exactly what we are doing right now, right? So what does an inner join signify, everyone? An inner join means that how many of these values are appearing in both table A and table B. That's what we're doing, right? A repeat customer would be somebody who's there in table A and in table B. So if you look at this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, 6, which are the values that are common in both of them? 3 and 4. This is what we call an inner join. Now, if you were to do an inner join in SQL, you would have written something like, one second. Then you basically have to write a statement like this. Do you see this? So now we have an inner join statement here. The beauty of Excel is that it's much simpler than having to learn all of this, but you're broadly getting the same result that you're getting in an inner join, right? This is one of the fundamental things you have to learn in database management, because you have to do this everywhere in finance, HR, marketing, supply chain. Any function or sub-function that you think of, there are always reasons for you to try and get this, the loyal customers, right? Okay, now I will not spend a lot of time on it. The reason is that I already have a beautiful video explaining this. So if I can just share the link for my YouTube channel as well. And I'll share the link for this specific video as well. So this is on marketing analytics. Do you see this, everyone? Repeat purchase rate. No, not this one, this one. All new lost repeat customer using Vlookup and joins, right? So I've taken the same or a similar data set and I'm explaining step by step how to do all of this, right? And this is not a short video that I just tell you the formula without explaining to you how it works. I'm explaining step by step how everything works, right? So I'll just share the link with you. So copy and paste on the chat window. Here we go. Okay. So similar to this, we also have other types. So we have a, like I said earlier, we have a repeat lost customer as well. In fact, if I can show you one more thing, it's a little out of context for today's workshop, but it's so good that I have to show you, okay? There is also something new in Excel called Lambda, like this. I know it looks very scary and very complex, but I'll just tell you what it does. The Lambda allows you to create your own function. For example, do you see this? I've created my own function called new join. What does it do? Watch this. If I say I want repeat customer, it tells me repeat. If I say I want lost, it gives me lost. And if I say new, it gives me. How cool is that? And there are only 3 arguments in it. What are the arguments? What is list 1, which is previous month? What is list 2? It is the current month. And what is the type of join, which is a repeat, lost, or a new, right? So this is how the formula looks. We're using something called a Lambda here, which is something which is also available in other programming languages. So Lambda is something available in, just a moment. Yeah, it's available in Java, C++, and all other programming languages. And it was introduced in Excel a few years back. In fact, 1 year back it was introduced, but it was announced many years back. And this was such a big deal because this completely revolutionizes the way we work on Excel. And I'm not saying that, Satya Nadella is saying that. So you can clearly see here that when Lambda was introduced, it was such a big deal. And Satya went everywhere and spoke about how Excel has now become a popular, not just a popular, but a Turing complete programming language, right? Because now you can build your own algorithms on it. I'll not get into detail right now. I have a lot of content on YouTube that explains it. If you're interested, you can go and have a look at that, right? But definitely take out some time and have a look at this, right? Perfect. I have saved the file and I will continue with the last couple of things, how to work with multiple worksheets, okay? Very simple. Please watch. Now, the problem here is that I have the customer ID. We want to know the customer name, but the database is not available on this sheet. It is available on a different sheet. It's not too difficult, but it's not very easy either. Usually what do? We will write equal to Vlookup, then we select our values. I will put a comma and I'll have to go to my other sheet, isn't it? But this is where it gets very complex because it's very hard to manage the formula. And that is where errors happen, isn't it? So I'll tell you a very easy way to handle this type of a requirement. Step number 1, select your data like I have done. This is your formula bar. We all know that. On the left of the formula bar, we have something called the name box, the one I've highlighted, this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select my data like this, and I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it my database and press enter. Why are we doing that? Now that I've given it a name, I can simply write database and it will give me the same database. It returns the same result, right? Now when I'm writing my formula, I'm writing Vlookup, lookup value. The table array, I don't have to go to the other sheet. Why not? Because I've already given it a name. So if you want to refer to that sheet, all that you have to do is to just write that name that you have given, comma 2, comma false, and you get the result. How cool is that? So this means that that database could be on any sheet in your current workbook. You don't even need to know which sheet it is in. All you have to do is you have to refer to it by the name, which is database, and it will give you the result. Now, if you say, but Havish, what if I want to go to that name? Very simple. You have database here. I can just press F5, okay? And I click on OK, and it will take me to that sheet. Or in the top left corner, you can just click on the name here, and it will take you to that sheet. This is one way of doing this. Now, some people say, Havish, this is great, but maybe I don't want to do it. I want to use a normal formula, which is with a $sign. So I'll also tell you how to do that. Please watch. One moment. Okay, here we go. The suggestion here is to use something called a new window. What is the name of my workbook right now? It is called example, right? So I will go to view and I'm going to go to new window. That means I'm creating a copy of my workbook. So the moment I click on it only one time, see what happens. Do you see this? Now it has become example 2. So now there are 2 copies of my Excel file open. But what is the point? Very, very important point. Now I can take my example 1 and like this, I can drag it to the left side. And then on the right side, I can select example 2. Do you see what I'm doing right now? This is so cool because now I can write my formula and I can see my database at the same time. Equal to Vlookup. I'm selecting all my names, sorry, all my IDs, comma, and I can select like this, comma 2 and comma first. This is a much better way of working, isn't it? The fact that I'm able to see my formula and select my data at the same time. Otherwise, what happens is that you're writing the formula, but you can't see your data. You're working with multiple sheets. So this is I'm not telling you to write a different formula. I'm just teaching you how to improve the way you navigate multiple workbooks on the screen, right? So one more time, all I did was, we're working on an Excel file. I select view, and then I select new window. Then I want to make one of them come on the left side, one of them come on the right side. So I can just use the mouse and drag it to the left side. This one comes on the right side. And this is so cool because I can see 2 different sheets from the same workbook at the same time. This is also very useful when you want to do a reconciliation or any other formula for that matter, not just to Vlookup, where you want to work on multiple sheets at the same time. Right? Any questions on either of these, anyone? On the database name that I gave and the way I split everything into 2 different windows.
Yes, sir. One doubt.
Tell me.
When you select, in case of Vlookup, the table array which you selected, you were selecting the entire column, right? I mean, from C to E. In most of the cases, there won't be an issue, but would there be an issue with this kind of approach? I mean, instead of selecting the exact table area, we are selecting the entire column, right?
Not at all. If you ask me, personally, I always select the entire column, and there's a reason for that. See, if you only select the range, what will happen is that A, you will have to put a $sign, so that's extra effort on your part. And B, tomorrow, if you add more names to the database, you'll have to update the formula, isn't it? The advantage of selecting the entire column is that A, you don't have to put $signs, and B, if new names will get added, you don't have to bother. It will get updated automatically.
Okay.
Makes sense, right? So $signs are not required and it gets updated automatically. A lot of people also say that, will this not have a performance impact? Like if I select the entire column, is that not going to make my formula run a little slower? I can guarantee to you that will not happen, right? Formula will not become slower just because you're selecting the entire column. I almost always do it this way, unless there's a good reason for me to only select it like this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's close this and move over to multiple workbooks. Actually, there's not much to tell you in multiple workbooks, but still, because a lot of people ask for this, I thought I'll cover it. So let me open my Vlookup sheet and my database, right? So this is my Vlookup sheet and this is my database. Okay, like I did before, I'm keeping one of the workbooks open on the right side, one of them open on the left side, right? In fact, it should be the other way around. This should be on the left and this should be on the right, right? Remember, they're not two different worksheets. They are completely two different workbooks. So how do I do this? Same thing, no difference. Vlookup, you select your lookup values. The table array is this, comma, 2, comma, false. Now, what is going to happen is you will get the result if I break it into 4 lines. See, the first line is the lookup value. We know that. What are we searching for? The third line is the column number, which is the second column from where we want the result, which is the customer name. And the third one is false, which means we want an exact match. Now, the only difference is that I'm not just selecting column number C and F. I'm also putting the name of the sheet, which is database, and I'm also writing the name of the workbook. As simple as that. Now, a lot of people say, but what will happen if I close the other workbook? Nothing will happen. The formula will still work, but you will get the name of the entire path of the file as well. So for example, now if I close the database, what will happen? It will show you the entire link because all my files are saved on OneDrive. That is why it's not a local path. It is the path to my OneDrive link like this. So if I can highlight it, this entire part, everyone, is what is my OneDrive. This is the folder on OneDrive where I've shared the file. Right? Within this, which file am I working on? I'm working on database XLSX, which is the sheet, database, and which is the column CF. That's it. You don't have to do anything. It's just that you have to learn how to read this formula. Once you understand, there are different paths to it. The path, right? The folder, the file, the sheet, and the column, right? That's it. The same thing you can do with Excel online as well, or with Google Sheets. So if you ever want to do VLOOKUP with multiple, let's say Excel files online, the only difference is that this will not be a folder, right? It will just be the URL of that file, which you have saved. But broadly, it is the same thing. There's no difference, right? Any questions on this, anyone? Cool. So there's a lot we have covered. It's still not everything because there's so much more that I can cover. But I just want to show you the one with fuzzy lookup as well, since somebody asked for it. Okay, I don't think I'll be able to search for it like this. Let me first write Havish Madhupati and fuzzy. Will that work? Let's see how good indexing is. Okay, it does work. Perfect. So first, let me tell you what we are doing. See, imagine that you're searching for a name, which is, let's say, Aaron Bergman. Now, the problem is that in one of the data sets, it is Bergman with a B-E-R-G-M-A-N, isn't it? But in the other data set, it is Aaron Bergman with a B-A-R-G. It's a spelling mistake. It happens all the time. Now, you and I both know that it is referring to the same person, isn't it? But the problem is, I can't use a VLOOKUP, right? Exact match will not work. An approximate match only works with numbers, not with text values. So here we use something called a fuzzy lookup, which is a tool. It's an add-in tool available on Excel, free of cost on every version. And it tells you something called the similarity index. So it tells you that an Aaron Bergman with an A and an Aaron Bergman with an E is matching 97%, right? How to do it, I'll not explain right now because it's already explained in this video. And you can see here, I've explained how to use the tool. Right? So you just have to go to Microsoft. You have to download an add-in called the fuzzy lookup, which is like this, what you see on the right side. And I've explained it step by step in the video. There's another way of doing it, which is on Power Query, which I'll not explain right now, but it's a tool available on Excel and Power BI, which also allows you to do a fuzzy lookup, right? Which is basically here, like this, right? Everything is there in the video, so you can go back and have a look at this, right? Let me just share the link with everyone.
Havish, can we also do fuzzy lookup using VLOOKUP? Is that also a thing?
No.
Fuzzy match?
No. So VLOOKUP, Xlookup don't have a fuzzy option in it. Will it get added at some point in the future? I'm not sure. It might get added. It's not that Excel can't do it. One of the reasons, see, you have to understand as a product manager, how Microsoft decides what to launch, what not to launch. There's a very fine balance between giving every possible option to the user versus compromising the usability. if imagine VLOOKUP had 12 different options in it, I, for one, would have been very happy because it gives me a lot of flexibility, isn't it? But what will happen is that for most users, it will become very complex because they will not know how to use all of them. So, that fine balance between, like I said, giving options, flexibility, but not hampering the usability is what happens. So that's why now you notice that in Excel, we have so many features, but Excel doesn't force you to use it. For example, I personally use something called Power Pivot, which allows me to combine multiple tables into a single pivot table. I use something called Power Query Editor, which allows me to do ETL on Excel. But Excel is still the same Excel it used to be 30 years back. So for a regular user, they're not forcing you to revolutionize the way you're working. But for a power user, they have given all these power tools, Power Query, Power Pivot, like that. Great. Anything else, anyone? I think I broadly covered everything that I had on my mind. I don't think I've left out anything important. But if there's anything which is specific to you, you can always ask me. Happy to answer. Okay, there's one question. Please go ahead, Sanket. Which laptop is good for data analytics? See, if you're doing Excel and all, any laptop with 100 and, what am I saying? With a solid state drive with about 16 GB of RAM should be enough. But if you're ever going to do things like Power BI, Tableau, machine learning, I would strongly invest in a more expensive laptop, right? Solid state drive is a must. 16 GB RAM is enough. Preferably an i7 at least. Sure, it might cost you a lot more money, but it will also last much longer and it's more future-proof. So you can end up using it for at least 5-6 years, right? And try to get something which is flexible. So where you have the possibility of adding more RAM in the future, right? Even though 16 GB RAM is more than enough, 16 GB RAM, solid state drive, any brand is okay. I mean, I don't have any personal preference. I think all brands are good. Yeah, there was one more question about this at the rate. Let me just answer that quickly. Okay, let's have a look at this. See, let's say I have a name and a sales value, everyone, and I have written ABC and I've written 1, 2, 3, okay? If I convert this data set into a table, which is, I click on insert and I select table here, right? What will happen is I'll get a table like this. My table is called table 1. Now, if I say equal to, and I select D4, look what happens. It selects at sales. What does that mean? It means that any operation that I'm going to perform is going to happen for my entire column. That means, so if I multiply it by 3, it will give me 369. Does it make sense? So for example, if I was doing it with the VLOOKUP, right? Let's say something like this. So each name, or let's say each ID had a name. Let's do it like this. So we have a Havish and an Anmol and a Tala, right? So we have a A, B, and a C. So when I do a VLOOKUP and I say lookup value is ID, do you see I'm not selecting all the 3 IDs? I'm just selecting at ID, which means every single row in the ID column. And we're searching in the table array H and I, column number 2 and a false. What will happen? It will give me all the 3 results. Does it make sense? That is what the at refers to.
Okay, so basically when we are converting it to a table, then we cannot reference single cell.
You can reference single cell. So if you select it manually, so if you write C4 manually, it won't stop you from doing it. In that case,
Okay.
if you notice, I'll have to manually drag it down, but that sort of defeats the purpose of using a table.
Yeah.
The entire point of using a table is to reference, and this is a bad idea. Once you reference the table, it's highly suggested not to select and reference the cell manually, because that will create a lot of other problems, right?
Okay.
So in the technical term, we call this a row context, which means that the operation is being performed for every single row in your column. So when you work on Power BI, you will learn about what we call the row context and the filter context. This is what we call a row context. Great. So we've answered that as well. Anything else, anyone? We're a little ahead of time. Can I show some project portfolio for data analytics with Tableau and it is fine to go with Tableau or else learn Power BI? Yeah, I mean, very strongly, I think all of you should be learning Power BI. And I've spoken enough about it. The reason is that 97% of Fortune 500 are using Power BI. If you do a search on Naukri, just ask anybody in the corporate what type of opportunities and roles are out there. Overwhelmingly, you will hear more of Power BI than Tableau across sectors, across functions, right? Yeah, you can see dashboards I've created on Power BI and Tableau on my website. So these are all dynamic dashboards that have been created on Power BI and on Tableau. I obviously have courses as well on all these topics. So if you are interested and you want to have a look, I'm sharing the link with everyone. Right.
So in Power BI, there are issues with respect to if there's a data size is huge, it takes a lot of time to load and
No, Power BI can handle any size of data. I personally have worked with 25, 30, 35 crore records, and it works in seconds, not in minutes, right? How you work with Power BI is obviously determined by the type of laptop you have. So while Microsoft says 2 GB RAM is enough, the reality is that you do need more RAM, right? 16 GB is more than enough, and you need a solid state drive, not a hard drive. Plus, if you're working on an enterprise laptop, something given from the company, typically 9 out of 10 times they will be slow because of all the things and bloat that IT puts into it. Every company has this problem. Everything from a PwC to a BCG to a Sterlite has this issue. You can't solve it because that's the way organization laptops are configured, right? But if you work on a personal laptop, it will work without any problem. Power BI, by the way, can handle as much as 2 billion records in minutes, right? So data size should never be a problem with Power BI. Does learning Power BI help with financial planning? Absolutely. I mean, Power BI is used everywhere. I'm teaching D-Shaw, right? So everywhere in financial planning, analysis, FPA, hedge fund, investment banking, Power BI is being used, right? Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, Vish, I have one question specifically regarding to the Power BI itself, Power Query related part. So, like, can I go ahead with that?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so I'm assuming, like, let's assume I have a data Excel file which is for 10,000 records, and I've done some calculations in Power Query. So I did some new fields and did something, but now I want to get that data into Excel if I'm opening using Power BI. So when I click on copy entire table, it only copies the first 1,000 records of it.
Yeah,
and
that's a
doesn't copy
limitation.
all.
Yeah, that's a limitation. So from Power Query, I'm not sure if there's a way, but you can do it from the data view. You can use a tool called Bravo, right? Bravo does not have an export limit. In Power BI, natively, the limit is from Power Query, 1,000 rows. From the data view, you have 150,000 rows. But if you use this free tool called Bravo, there is no limit. You can export the entire data set as a CSV or an Excel file.
Okay, so this is used like an add-on?
It's an add-on. It's a free add-on. So I can just show you quickly. So one moment. Do you see there is something called external tools here, right? So
Yes.
in external tools, I have something called Bravo here, which is a free tool created by SQL BI. It's officially supported by Microsoft, and this gives you an option called export data. There's no data limit that you have here.
Okay, so I can just use this in like while doing the Power Query itself.
Yeah, but do remember this will only export the final output, not the steps.
Okay, no, like if I have a Power Query window open and I have the data there, I just want to copy and get that into Excel. I don't want to load
This
it
is how
in
you
Power
would do
BI.
it. This is how you would do it. But Excel also has Power Query, right? Why are you even doing it in Power BI in the first place? If you have a query,
yeah, there were some features which are not available, like fuzzy matching. I couldn't find it in the Excel Power BI.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in that case, if you want to just export the final output that is coming after applying all the applied steps, this is how you would do it using Bravo.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was helpful.
Yeah.
Avish, I have a question about
Please.
custom visuals in Power BI. So
Sure.
we had a requirement to create a custom visual because none of the other visuals were satisfying it. And I mean, I looked online, I couldn't find a lot of courses for that. And also on
There
the
aren't courses for that. You will have to search in some really strange places for that. So one of them is called Charticulator, which
Yeah,
is
I've used that, but like this is also not that
yeah, if this
customizable. You
is,
cannot.
it's not that customizable. If this is not solving your need, then the only option you have is to have a developer who will create custom visuals on Power
Yeah.
BI using JavaScript. So I mean, that's the only option that you have.
Mm.
Yeah, but you will need to have a developer that does this for you.
Okay.
Or you can use maybe D3JS or something, because D3JS is now
Yeah.
supported.
Yes,
Maybe that
it
can
is.
solve your purpose. Or you can use HTML. So if you have like really good HTML developers, then because you have these HTML visuals, you can write the HTML CSS behind it, and that can sort of act like a visual as well.
Yeah, so personally, I tried those things. I mean, we didn't have any HTML or CSS developers, but
Okay.
looking in and trying that, but it wasn't
Yeah.
really.
So no,
Yeah.
the thing is that these are very
Difficult.
early days. That's one. It's very early days, so not a lot of people are doing it. Will people end up doing it more in the future? I'm not quite sure, because this is still a very small segment of organizations, right, who need to create custom visuals. Plus, the fact is that the platform is so open to developers that every month, like just today, the September update rolled out for Power BI. So more and more visuals come in. Most organizations are happy picking one, and being happy with it rather than creating one of their own, right? But sure, in my experience, none of my clients use custom visuals, so I can't really comment on it. But the ones who are experimenting with it, this is what they're using: HTML, CSS, which is on K-Teams, and one is on Nova Silva, or you are doing it on D3JS. Or if you have somebody who can do it on Python and R, but there also you have a lot of limitations with the data size and all of that. So not all libraries and packages will be supported on Python and R. Cool. Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me for the session. I hope there were takeaways for everyone. We started with the basic Vlookup. We ended up doing a lot of stuff. Remember, this is not everything. I have introduced you to the complex Vlookups as well, which is the practical use cases. There are loads of other things I can think of at this moment. But I hope this helps. I will share the files with you. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out at any point of time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
Thank
session. It
you.
was very
Thank you.